So I'm now going to record Daf Pei Part 2. So we were up to Zephes Vigofris, approximately 3, 6, 7 lines from the bottom. Okay, actually we did that. Zephes Vigofris, we did K'dei Lasais. Tar and sulfur was in order to fill a hole that you keep a hole in a container of mercury. Tana, we learned in a brayse, K'dei Lasais nekev cotton, in order to block a small hole in a container that holds mercury. Charsis K'dei Lasais pikur, enough crushed brick in order to make the cement that can cement a bellows to the opening of a crucible. And a crucible, again, we talked about, was a keli that you smelted metal in. It used to have a hole in the side so air can get in so that the fire should roar. And they used to attach a bellows into that hole and cement it. But Rabbi Yehuda said cement was enough cement to make a tripod that the crucible sits on. L'meimer, do you mean to say the shiur de Rabbi Yehuda nafish? The Rabbi Yehuda's shear is larger because it's a whole tripod. It's not just enough cement to cement the bellows to the crucible. Hakaimal, and we have a shita, the shiur de Rabbanan nafish. The Rabbanan always had a bigger shear than Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanan, because we learned in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda says, when we were talking about this plant called a gemi, where the Tanakama said it was enough to make a hanger for a sieve or sifter, Rabbi Yehuda said, K'dei lita l'menu midas minel l'kotten, to measure the foot of a child for a shoe, which was a smaller shear. Now again, this is not semantics. There's a lumdus to this that the Ramban and other Rishonim talk about. We once talked about when, let's say, something has a more common use and a lesser use, so therefore we look at the more common use. So what if the more common use is larger and the lesser use is smaller? So we'll go by the more common use, which is larger, and you're not going to be chayiv until you carry out the larger amount. It seems Rabbi Yehuda would hold that if the lesser use was still a pretty common use, then we're going to go with the lesser use, or you'll be chayiv even if you take out less. So therefore we talked about this gemi plant, whereas the Tanakama says most of the time it's used to make handles for utensils, which is a bigger shear. Rav Yehuda says, well, nevertheless, sometimes they use it in order to measure a child's foot, so you'll be chayiv even if you carry out a smaller shear. So if that's Rav Yehuda's opinion, then why here, when we talk about cement, and the Tanakama said enough cement to attach a bellows to a crucible, Rav Yehuda says enough to make a whole tripod. That's a bigger shear, so Rav Yehuda would be mekel. The Gemara says, Ema, we should say, Kidei losud pitput kira ktana. Rabbi Yehuda didn't mean to manufacture the whole tripod. It means if you have a tripod that has cracks, and you need to patch up some of the cracks. And patching the cracks in the tripod will be smaller yet than the amount of cement to cement the bellows to the crucible. And once again, Rabbi Yehuda holds, even though fixing cracks in a tripod is less a common use, but nevertheless, we go with that lesser use, and we're machmir, and you're chayiv when you're mitzvah the smaller amount. Subin bran was kedeliten al pikur shel tzorfei zav. Enough to, we learned in the Mishnah, that's enough to block up a crucible that you smelt gold in, and that you want to block up the hole in order to retain the heat inside the keli. Tana Rabbanan, the Rabbanan taught in the Brayse, Hamaitzi Seyor, Kedei Legabel Bayis Atit. Hair was used in order to mix cement. The same way in Mitzrayim they used straw, sometimes they used to use hair. It helped the cement hold together. But tit, the actual cement, the shear is Kedei Lasais Pikur Shel Tzorfei Zav, enough to be able to cement the bellows to a crucible of a goldsmith. Now, what's interesting, we talked about this before. If you have a finished amount of cement, then it's choshev as long as you can cement bellows to a crucible, which is a small amount. But you're not going to manufacture cement unless you're going to manufacture a larger amount. Remember, we talked about dirty water in order to make cement would have to be dafka revias, because nobody would bother to make smaller amounts of cement. So here too, the shear of the hair or the shear of the water is in order to make a bigger batch of cement. But if you have cement, it's the shear to cement the bellows to the crucible. Sid, lime, kedei losud, the Tanakama said, in order to apply it on a small child, a small girl. Tana, we learned, kedei losud etzbek tana shebabanis, enough lime to apply to a small finger of a girl in order to make the skin look more red, and it makes the complexion look healthier. Amar Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, B'nai Yisrael shegil lepirkam, Jewish girls that were starting to show hair, but they're not old enough and they feel embarrassed. Poor girls would remove it with a depilatory of lime. Richer girls would use fine flour. And princesses would remove it with myrrh oil. Shenamar, as the pasuk says in Megillah Esther, that the girls waiting for Achashverosh would spend Shisha Chadoshim b'Shemen Amor, 6 months in myrrh oil. My Shemen Amor, Rav Huna bar Chi Amar Setachas, which is a perfumed oil. Rav Yomי bar Abba Amar Shemen Zayis Shlei V'Yeshlish. It's olive oil from olives that have not yet matured a third. Tanya, we learned in a Braisa, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, there's a Mishnah in Menachos that you can't use oil for a mincha, which is an piknoin. What's an piknoin? Shemazayis shlei v'yeshlish. Olive oil, which has not matured a third. Lama sachanoisa, why do you apply it? Shemashir et asayar ma'aden abasar. It removes hair, and it also makes the flesh look more delicate. Rav Bibi havile brato tafla aver v'shakal ba'arba me'azuzi. Rav Bibi had a daughter, so he applied this lime on her limb by limb, and she came out very beautiful, and he was able to get 400 zuz when he married her off. Havu nachre b'shevavuse, there was a Gentile in his neighborhood, havile barta also had a daughter, so tafla b'chadzimna, he decided to take the lime, and he applied it on his daughter all over her body in one shot. Umeisa, she died. Omar, sure enough, the guy said, Kotler Rav Bibi Librati, Rav Bibi killed my daughter. And he decided to take the whole bottle of medicine in one shot. Omar Rav Nachman says, Rav Bibi the Shasi Shichra, Rav Bibi who drinks beer, Bayan Bansai Tifla, therefore his daughters develop more hair, and therefore they need a depilatory. Anan Deloisha Sina Shichra, we don't drink beer, like Bayan Banasan Tifla, our daughters don't need that lime. So whereas the Tanakhama said that the shear for lime is in order to apply on the limb of a child, Rav Yehuda Ravida says Kedei Losut Kilkul, in order to apply lime for Kilkul. And there was another opinion of Nechemia who said Kedei Losut Undifi. So my Kilkul and my Andipi. What's a Kilkul and what's an Andipi? Amar Rav says Tzida Ubas Tzida. Tzida is the temples, enough lime to remove the hair at the temples. The Basidah is to remove the hair below the temples. So the Maimer, do you mean to say the Shiura de Rabbi Yehuda Nafish? That means Rabbi Yehuda says enough lime to remove the hair at the temples, which is more lime than you need to remove the hair below the temples. But Vakaimalan, the Shiura de Rabbanan Nafish, we had learned that the Rabbanan always have a larger amount, and Rabbi Yehuda has a smaller amount, because Rabbi Yehuda is always machmir, and says you're chayiv if you're mitzvah even a smaller amount. And here Rabbi Yehuda has a larger amount than Rabbi Nechemia, because Rabbi Yehuda says the amount of lime to remove the hair at the temples, and Rabbi Nechemia said below the temple. Gemara says zuta midrabanan, v'nafish midrab Nechemia. But the Rabbanan said enough lime to apply on a limb, so that was a bigger shear. Rabbi Yehuda was machmer against the Rabbanan, and he said it's enough lime to remove the hair of the temples, which is less than the amount of lime that you put on a limb. But Rabbi Nechemia was even more machmer than Rabbi Yehuda, but that's fine. Meis the Gemara responds with the kasha. Amar Rabbi says, Nir and Divrei Rabbi Yehuda b'chavut. I think Rabbi Yehuda is right that if it's lime that's mixed with a lot of water, which is used to remove hair, so then I think he's right. It's the amount of lime that you take the hair off around the temple. But with different Nechemia, I think Rabbi Nechemia is right. But Beitzas Hasid, if you have like a block of this lime that you made a hard lump with less water. But Visal Kedatach, if it would enter your mind that the dispute between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemia is Tzida Bas Tzida, the hair of the temple or the hair below the temple, Idividi Chavut, both of them use a liquid lime. So how could Rabbi say that Rabbi Yehuda is more right if it's liquid, and Rabbi Nechemia is more right when it's solid, when both of them are removing hair and that's done with a liquid? Elam Rabbi Yitzchak Amri Debei Rabbi Ami. In Rabbi Ami's Beis Medrash they said Andifa, that what Rabbi Nechemia was talking about is you have a clay utensil that has 2 holes, one on top, one at the bottom. When you want to fill it, you block up the hole at the bottom, and he said that the lime is to fill that hole at the bottom. Maskif Rav Kana v'chiyodam oisam oisav an poros. When a person wastes his money, he's going to have wine in a jug, and he's going to have a hole at the bottom where he pours wine from it, and he's going to fill it with lime, but the wine, it seems, would interact with the lime and would wear through it and would spill out. Elam Rav Kana has a third shot, Shnasos. It's markers on a container to show how much fluid is in the container. Kiritanan, as there's a Mishnah, Menocha Shnasos Hoya Behin. A hin is a liquid measure of 12 lugin, and it had markers on it. Adkan Lepar. When you had a half a hin, which is 6 lugin, that's the amount of wine you needed for a bull. Ad kan la'ayil, you had another marker which was a third of the hin, which was 4 lugin, and that's how much you needed for a ram. Ad kan lekeves, there was another marker that was at a quarter of the hin, because that was 3 lugin for a lamb. So that's so andipi means markers. So again, we have a machlokes. According to the Tanakhama, it's enough lime to apply on the limb of a child. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's enough lime to take off the hair at the temples. And according to Rabbi Nechemia, it's enough lime to make markers on a container. Iba is saying, if you want to have another pshat, my andipa, what's an andipa? Aputa, it's a forehead, where hair doesn't grow. So there you just apply a little bit of it in order to make it look ruddy, good complexion. There was somebody from the Galil that came to Bavel. They said to him, Kum derosh lanu b'masa merkava. Would you like to teach us masa merkava? That's what we read on the first day of Shavuos. Amrulu said, for sure I'll teach you masa merkava. Edrash l'chu k'dedarsh Reb Nechemia l'chavrei. I'll give you a drush of masa merkava that Reb Nechemia taught his friend. V'nafka ar isa min kaisel u'machase bandipi emis. A hornet came out from a wall and stung him in his forehead and it killed him. Amrulay, they said, min dilay dalay. It was his own fault that he was going to teach these saydis atayr, these secrets, to people that weren't worthy. But what we see here is on dipi is a forehead. So again, we have 3 shittas. One sheet is how much lime are you chai when you carry out on Shabbos, enough lime to apply on a limb of a child. Another sheet is enough lime to remove the hair of the temples. And the third was enough lime to apply across the forehead. Adama, which is a red lime, which is used for making seals. You're chayv if you carry out kechaysim hamartzufin, enough to make a seal on merchandise bags that were used on ships. Divrei Rabbi Akiva, chachamim aymim kechaysim igoris, enough to make a seal on a letter. Zevel v'chayladak, fertilizer or thin sand, kedei lezavel kelach shel kruv. If you have enough to fertilize one plant of cabbage, Divrei Rabbi Akiva. Chachamim aymim kedei lezavel krisha, in order to fertilize one plant of a leek. Chaylagas, coarse sand, kedelitel al maloi kaf sid, to put on the spoon of a plaster. The plasterers used to use a thick sand to make their plaster. Kone, a stick or reed, kedelasis kulmis, enough to make a quill. Imhaya ava imerusas, if the stick is too thick or it's crushed and you can't make a quill out of it, it's kedelevashal by beya kalash bebeitzim. It's enough wood in order to cook or fry a easily fried egg, trufa, which is scrambled in a suna be'ilfis, and it's on a frying pan. Al maloi kaf sid, we learned in the Mishnah that thick sand, the shear to be chai for maitzi, which is chashuv, is if you have enough to put on a plasterer's pallet. Tanu, we learned in a brayse, kedelitan al pikaf shel sayadin. Again, it's a metal pallet that the plasterers use to make plaster, and enough sand to put on one batch of plaster on his pallet. Man Tana, who is the Tana the Chayil Ma'alilei Desid? Who is the Tana that says that coarse sand is good for plaster? Rav Chisda says Rabbi Yehuda. It goes according to Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya, there's a brayse in Saita, La Yasud Adam as Beisai Besid. After the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, you're not allowed to plaster your house nicely with plaster. Elam can erev by, unless you mixed in teven eichel, straw or sand, which will darken the plaster, so your house won't be so nicely plastered. Rabbi Yehuda says teven mutter, you're allowed to put in straw, because straw only depreciates the plaster to make it dark, but chayil aser, but you can't put thick sand into your plaster, because it makes the plaster stronger. So in spite of the fact it makes the plaster darker, but since it makes it stronger, that's considered an enhancement of your house that they prohibited after the Churban Beis Hamikdash. So you see, the Rabbi Yehuda holds that a coarse sand enhances plaster. Rav Amarav says afilatay Rabbanan. It could be even the Rabbanan will hold that the sand enhances plaster because kilkulay zeo tikunai. On one hand, the Rabbanan held that you're allowed to put sand into plaster after the Churban because it just makes it dark, and therefore it's considered it degrades the plaster by making it dark. But if that's what happens, then a Jew can use it in his house, because after the Churban you had to use a darker plaster. So therefore the sand was used in plaster, even though it degraded its color, because that's what Jews needed in order to make plaster in their houses. So therefore that's chashiv, and you're chayiv on it from being moitzi b'Shabbos. Kana, a stick, a reed, K'dei lasa is kulmas, enough to make a quill. Tana, we learned in the Brisa, kulmas hamagia lekishrei etzba'oisav, enough to make a quill that will reach your knuckle. But Ravashi says this quill that reaches the knuckle, which knuckle? Is it kesher al yed, the knuckle where the finger meets the palm, or kesher tachton, or is it the knuckle where the fingers bend? And Taiko, the Gemara is not sure. But Rabbi said, for sure, if you carry out a quill, you're chayiv. It's only if you carry out wood, you're only chayiv if it's enough wood to make a decent sized quill. Vim hoya ove, if the stick was thick or crushed and you can't make a quill from it. Tana, we learned in the Brisa, we're talking about enough to fry an egg, trufa, which is scrambled, b'shemen and oil, unusuna be'ilfis, and on a frying pan. Amalei Mar Breder Ravina Levrei. Mar Breder Ravina said to his son, Mishmielach be'akala mahi. What is called a be'akala? What is called an easy egg to fry? Amalei be'asad tziltzila, an egg of this bird called tziltzila. So he says, my time, well, why do you say tziltzila? If it's mishum de zutra, if you say that's a small egg, ema de tziparta, you could have used as an example a tziparta, which is even smaller. Ishtik, so the child was silent. Amrleh, he says to his father, Midi shmielach baha, father, do you know what's pshat in a be'akala? Amrleh said, Hachi amar of sheishes be'as tarnagoylis, the chicken egg. And my korele be'akala, why is it called kala? Shiru chacham eilicha be'akala levashel yoser mebeitzas tarnagoylis. The fastest egg to fry or cook is a chicken egg. So therefore, that's why it's called kala, because it fries quickly, and it doesn't need as much wood in order to fry it. In Maishna Kol Shiurei Shabbos Kegregeres, why is it that all things that have to do with food on Shabbos are all the shear of a fig, and here it's kebeya, here the wood is in order to fry an egg? Amrleh says, no, Hochi Amar of Nachman, Kegregeres Mebeya Kala. It's enough wood to fry a fig size of food made out of chicken egg. In other words, it's not the size of the chicken egg. The chicken egg is the material. But the volume is the size of a fig. So when you carry out wood, if it's big enough to make a quill, you're chayiv. If it's not good for a quill, then you're chayiv if you have enough of it that could fry a gregaris shear of a chicken egg. I'll see if I can possibly get a pshat in. The halacha is that if you carry out half a gregaris and it gets destroyed, and you carry out another half a gregaris, you're potter, because you don't have a whole gregaris out in the street at one time. The Pri Megadim wonders if this halacha is only by carrying out, because carrying out is called an inferior malacha, malacha grua. 38 out of 39 malachas, you actually affect a physical change in an object. Haitzah, you're just moving it from place to place. So maybe only in Haitzah do we require the entire shear to be extant at one time. Maybe teichen, grinding, or harvesting, maybe if you would have ground or harvested a shear of a half a gregaris, and then it would have been consumed or gone, and you would have done the other half, maybe you'd be chayiv anyway. It is interesting, the Pri Megadim says that when it comes to writing two letters, if somebody wrote one letter, and then the letter was erased, and then he wrote another letter, for sure he says you're potter. The question is why the Pri Megadim differentiates between in writing where he's sure that if you write one erase and then you write the other you potter, whereas by kaitzer or teichen he's not sure whether both halves have to be there at the same time. There is a fascinating Taisvis. Taisvis says that even though the malachas all have shiurim, but sometimes the Mishnah states the shear and sometimes it doesn't. For instance, when it talks about writing, it says writing two letters. However, when it talks about harvesting or it talks about grinding, although the shear is the equivalent of a gregaris, of a fig, but the Mishnah doesn't say that. And he wonders why. So Taisva says, so that Taisva's observation. So there's a Sefer Magen Avos who says, he thinks the reason is as follows. The Mishnah is telling you that in order to be considered writing, it has to be writing of two letters. If it's less than two letters, it's not considered writing. In other words, writing one letter is not a half a shear of writing. It's not called writing altogether. So therefore, if you wrote one letter, you haven't written anything yet. If it was erased, so nothing happened. When you wrote the second letter, nothing plus nothing equals nothing. However, when you grind or you harvest, the Mishnah doesn't give a shear. Why? Because it's true, you're only chayv achatas if you do a whole gregaris. But let's say you do a half a gregaris, you ground, but you didn't grind enough for a chatas. As a half a shear, chatzi shear would be asim and atayra. So there, that's why the Pri Megadim believes that if you ground a half a shear and then somebody ate it up or it disappeared, then you ground another half, you will be chayiv, because you actually ground a half a shear, except it wasn't enough to be chayiv. So there, a half and a half is a whole. But when it comes to writing, one letter is really a nothing. One of these days, if I have enough time, I need 2-3 minutes, I would love to explain to everybody the chilik between misasek, davar shem ischaven, and loch shen tzircha legufa. One of these days I'll have an extra couple of minutes. Okay, good night everyone. Everyone be well. Kol tiv.